All right, we'll give a few minutes or a few seconds for folks to filter in. Thank you all for joining. This is the SBA's webinar on the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, a quick overview and then a deep dive into the application portal. And I will just reiterate that what we announced yesterday, which is you will be able to come to this website that we're going to preview today, restaurants.sba.gov, and register for an account. So enter all of your account information and make sure you can get into the platform successfully. You'll be able to do that starting Friday, April 30th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And then on Monday, May 3rd at noon Eastern, you'll be able to start your application and submit your application. So those, just to reiterate, at restaurants.sba.gov, you'll be able to register starting April 30th at 9 a.m. And then you'll actually be able to start and submit your application starting at noon Eastern on Monday, May 3rd. So now I'm going to kick it over to Patrick Kelly, the Associate Administrator of the Office of Capital Access, to do a quick overview of the program and eligible entities, and then we'll pass it to Ben Wallace, who's going to actually take you into the portal and give you a first look at what you'll be completing on Monday.
Yep. So for Nicole's purposes, I'm going to try to go from this overview slide to eligible uses and the calculations and then the priority applicants. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this training webinar where you will get to see exactly what you'll see on game day, May 3rd, 12 noon Eastern, hour 1, minute 1, day 1. We want everyone who's eligible to apply for this relief funds. So you'll get to see the exact web portal application from start to finish, so you know what to expect. We will be posting screenshots of the web portal application alongside the sample application, the program guide, where you can find those at sba.gov/restaurants. There is also a call center, as Nicola mentioned. She'll drop all of this in the chat, 1844, and she'll drop that number in. Call center is open from 8 a.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. It supports up to 10 languages. So please, this is an open book test. You should not be thinking at 12 p.m. Eastern on May 3rd. You should simply be rekeying in information from your application, uploading PDF documents that are valid documentation that have already been labeled. And based on our pilot experience this week, applicants are taking about 25 minutes to execute this application. So minute 1, hour 1, day 1, you should be ready. As Nicola mentioned, register on Friday, but please, 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 plan and have a plan of attack so that you're simply rekeying in information and uploading PDF documentation that's valid, supports your application, and is properly labeled. So the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, as has been widely reported, was part of the American Rescue Plan, March 11th, 2021. There's $28.6 billion. It's not likely that $28.6 billion is enough to meet all of the demand, but you should all apply day 1, hour 1, minute 1 for the funds. You will have up to March 11th, 2023 to use the funds for eligible expenses. If we can go forward one slide to eligible entities. So not surprisingly, restaurants are eligible, food stands, food trucks, food carts, caterers, bars, saloons, lounges, taverns, bowling alleys, snack and non-alcoholic beverage bars, so including coffee shops or Nicola's favorite, ice cream shops. Those entities are presumed to have greater than 33% on-site sales in 2019 for food and beverage, and do not need to provide any documentation to that effect. For bakeries, brew pubs, tasting rooms, breweries, microbreweries, wineries and distilleries, or inns, you will need to demonstrate that you had 33% or greater on-site sales for food and beverage in 2019. You do not need to demonstrate that for 2020. So we recognize that those wholesale businesses probably pivoted, and then obviously the pandemic impacted on-site sales in 2020. In terms of eligible expenses for this program, if we can jump to that slide, Nicola. So as far as eligible expenses, the business expenses, any type of business expenses, rent, payroll, utilities, maintenance expenses, including depreciation, but not accelerated depreciation, business supplies, food and beverage expenses, including raw materials, so hops if you're a brewery, covered supplier costs, and then all operating expenses, including insurance, marketing fees, licensing fees, everybody's favorite legal fees, and all business-related costs for any of your eligible entity. As far as expansion costs, they are not eligible. So expanding to new locations, expanding indoor seating, expanding a drive-through, expanding your truck fleet, your food stand fleet, that is not eligible. However, construction of outdoor seating is an eligible capital expenditure project with eligible expenses, and any equipment that breaks on existing locations would be eligible to replace as eligible expenses, including if a food truck breaks down, it's part of your existing fleet. When you applied for the award, you can replace it. Business debt, any business debt from a owner-occupied mortgage, principal and interest payments, and then business debt includes equipment leasing, equipment loans, credit card debt, working capital loans, any SBA loans, any EIDL loans. You can't prepay, but you can set aside proceeds from your award to make principal and interest payments each month up until March 11th, 2023. As far as the calculations, let's move forward to that quickly. For calculation 1, you've been in business before January 1, 2019, so you have a location or locations that were in business prior to January 1st, 2019. You'll take your 2019 gross receipts minus your 2020 gross receipts minus any PPP loan amount. For calculation 2, you'll take the average monthly gross receipts in 2019, you'll times that by 12, you'll minus 2020 gross receipts and minus your PPP loan amounts. And then finally, calculation 3, you'll take, this is for applicants that began operations on or between January 1st, 2020 and March 10th, 2021, and applicants not yet open but have incurred eligible expenses as of March 11th, 2021. You'll take the total amount spent on eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021. You'll minus 2020 and 2021 gross receipts, if applicable, and you'll minus PPP loan amounts. If you have a EIN under a management company and you applied for PPP at the management company level for several locations, you should apply in the exact same way for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And if those locations started at different times, so you had one that was started, for example, prior to January 1st, 2019, you'll use calculation 1. You might have another location that was partially opened in 2019. You'll use calculation 2, and you might have you might not have opened your third location, but you've incurred eligible expenses as of March 11th, 2021. So you might use calculation 3. You'll take calculation 3, calculation 2, and calculation 1, and you'll roll that up to an aggregate calculation, and then you'll deduct your PPP loan that you received at the aggregate level when you applied. If you applied at the separate location level based on separate EINs for PPP, you should apply that way for this program. And each PPP loan for those locations will be backed out, and you should use the appropriate calculation for those individual location applications that corresponds to when the operation began sales and opened. As far as the priority application period, any businesses with a 51% or more women-owned, veteran-owned, or minority-owned will be given a priority processing time for the first 21 days once the program goes live. Again, the program goes live May 3rd, 12 p.m. Eastern. You should register on Friday, April 30th, 9 a.m. At restaurants.sba.gov. And then you should have a plan. You're already done with this open book test. You've done all your work. You've asked the smartest person in your family for help. You called the neighbor. You called the CPA. You have filled out all the paperwork. You're simply rekeying in at 12 p.m. Eastern. Your game plan that you already know is what you're going to execute. You have your eligible documentation ready. So in terms of eligible documentation, you'll provide for gross sales receipts. The best form of the eligible documentation is your tax returns. The next best alternative form of documentation is a point of sale report. And if you don't have either one of those, you can provide externally or internally prepared financial statements such as income statements or profit and loss. And so that will be for your 2020 gross sales receipts on calculation 1 and calculation 2. For calculation 1 and 2, you should provide your gross receipts for 2019 through your tax returns. You will produce in the web application, which we will show you in a second, the application. You'll also authorize us to verify your taxes through the IRS form 4506T. As far as calculation 3, you'll do all of that, but then you will also document your eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021. And the preferred form of documentation for eligible expenses is qualified third-party accountant or bookkeeper or CPA comfort letter associated with profit and loss statements and balance sheet documentation, which will provide us with the fastest review. What we're looking for there is an indication from your CPA. I've worked with this customer. They routinely file taxes. I've reviewed their P&L and balance sheet statement, and it is accurate, factually accurate. That is the quick presentation so that we can get into, this is a technology presentation. There are other webinars where we take more time to go through the substance and policy, but the last thing I'll leave you with in terms of best practices is you have been waiting for 12 months. You've been sitting at your kitchen table with your family, with your head probably in your hands some nights. You've had to make the tough decision to tell an employee and what feels like a family member that you don't have payroll for them this month or this week. You've had to shutter locations potentially. So it has been, by any definition, probably the toughest year of your life. So do not miss the opportunity to be ready to apply Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern, May 3rd, hour 1, minute 1, day 1. Have everything planned out, have all your questions answered. Blow up this call center hotline, 1-844-279-8898. Send all your questions there. Every question that we get asked there, we answer, and we go call the folks back. We post the answers on a knowledge management queue. So have a plan of attack. Be ready to prepare. That call center is open 8 a.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. You can also call in off hours and get leave a voicemail for a call back. It supports up to 10 languages. Again, pull down the materials, fill them out. When you get to 12 p.m. Eastern, you've registered on Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. If you for your username and password, and you are logging into the portal at 12 p.m. Eastern. You're rekeying in your data in the application that Ben Wallace is going to walk us through. You're uploading your supporting documentation that you've already labeled. You've already asked your questions about your supporting documentation. You may have had your CPA help you with that. You may have had the smartest person in your family, whatever you need to do. But at 12 p.m. Eastern, May 3rd, hour 1, minute 1, day 1, you are simply executing a plan that you already know is correct, okay? So Ben, I'll kick it over to you to take us through the guided tour of the web portal application at restaurants.sba.gov.
While Ben pulls that up, I just want to iterate that if you use Toast or Square, you do not need to register on Friday, April 30th. So if you currently use Toast or Square, you'll apply through those partners. If you choose, it'll help provide documentation and the numbers we need for your calculation, and you don't need to register at restaurants.sba.gov on Friday. You can go to Toast and Square to get more info about their applications, but if you are those folks' customers, you don't need to register on Friday, April 30th at 9 a.m.
Correct. And the last thing I'll add on that is it stands to reason they already have all of your material data because you're a customer. That goes to the heart of this. You're familiar with their web application. You've used their support systems. They are ready to go, and they will provide the same application you'll see here in their user interface experience. They know how important this is to their customers. If you are a Clover or Aloha customer, they will provide you with a specific point of sale report that has a specific unique identifier. You'll register for this portal on Friday, April 30th at 9 a.m. And you will apply through this, but you'll upload their report that Aloha and Clover have provided. So those are huge resources that you benefit from if you're a customer of those vendors. And as Nicola mentioned, for Toast and Square customers, you do not need to pre-register, and you should direct all questions about how to apply to those vendors. They are ready for you, they're waiting, and they're ready to go to get you to the finish line. Hour 1, day 1, minute 1, May 3rd, 12 p.m. Eastern. All right, Ben, over to you.
Excellent. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Yeah, afternoon, everybody. Great to be here, and we'll go through the application as Patrick suggested. We're going to go through it pretty quickly, but I think it'll give you a flavor of what to expect on Monday. I'm going to go ahead and log in. This is restaurants.sba.gov. As you will note today, if you go to this site, we're in a pilot mode, so you will not be able to register. This blue link here will be active on Friday to register, but you will not be able to do what I'm about to do, which is open up a new application. But that said, let's go ahead and log right in. Of course, when you register, you'll be required to actually provide a cell phone number that we can use for ongoing security. So I have already done that. I'm just going to go ahead and pop this in. It is important if you, as an example, have maybe a voice over IP phone or sort of an international phone. This does require a United States domestic wireless carrier. So just be mindful if you have any issues registering, right, that is a requirement. So this is the main screen you will see on Monday when everyone logs in for the first time. And a few things I'll point out as Patrick highlights. On the left-hand side, it really just reminds folks to be ready with the information before they begin. It's equally important that the person who is beginning this application is authorized to sign based on the entity who's traversing this application. Right, so while you may, as Patrick highlighted, get assistance from your CPA or your bookkeeper, if that individual isn't authorized to sign an obligation on behalf of your restaurant, but ultimately at the end of this process, you will be asked to digitally sign not only a tax form that we use to verify your information with the IRS, but the official SBA application. So keep in mind, not only do you need to have the information and sort of be ready with the application, but make sure the right person is journeying through this application so you can go right into the electronic signature process and you won't have any delay. I'll click on right into the application and you'll notice a few things when I pull this screen. We try to keep it very simple because the program I think is well designed that hopefully with the information that you will have prepared, you'll be able to go quickly through this. We think about 20 to 25 minutes is what it should take if you're prepared. On the left-hand side, you'll see the different statuses. This portal will be available not only when you submit the application, but for any additional information the SBA may need. If you want to check on your status of your award, to check on payment status, if you ever need to send a question or a follow-up to the SBA, you can do it here. So not only is this a submission mechanism, this is really a servicing mechanism as an ongoing award applicant to the SBA, including at the end of the process, there'll be a post-award assessment process that you'll learn about more in the weeks and months to come. So that said, if we start our application, the first screen that we'll see is an eligibility screen that you'll have to actually go through and take your time and read and make sure that you're eligible to go forward with the application. As an example, if you're permanently closed, obviously you're not eligible. The other thing I'll highlight first, because it's helpful as you go through the application, whenever you have a sort of a question or potentially a confusing area, you'll first want to look for two things. One, does the SBA provide additional guidance via one of these hover tooltips, which you guys have probably seen used on other applications? But we also have a powerful knowledge base that's down here on the right that, as Patrick highlights, any call that we get into the call center, any inquiry that we're getting from folks on the phone today and from other folks, we make our best efforts to aggregate that, synthesize a clear answer, and put that in here as an. So what you see here is a couple articles, but if I were to ask a very basic question like what's an EIN, I get several articles talking about that exact topic. So you'll probably have questions around affiliation. You'll probably have questions around, do I include tax? You'll have questions around X, Y, and Z. Chances are that question's been answered in this knowledge base, so always start there. Read the app, read the instructions, the program guide, but this knowledge base is available not only in the portal now, it's also available on sba.gov/restaurants as we speak. So feel free after this call, if you have any questions, right, go there first, search around. If you have any other questions, and obviously there's the call center, we can take care of those. So know that that's there as a resource all throughout the application process. So as I'm through the eligibility, I'm going to go quickly to the next screen, the business detail screen. A very important screen to take your time on. Not only is this information sort of the fabric of your application, it also is what underpins ultimately the request of the IRS to verify your data. And it also allows us to, if in fact it's appropriate, to prioritize the application as required by the statute. So the first thing we're going to ask you is, do you fall in one of these categories? Again, if you have any questions around what these categories are and what they mean, there's a hover tip and there's a knowledge base. Take your time and read that. We also have a franchise indicator, right? If you happen to be in the franchise category, you can select that and search for the franchise. Pretty straightforward. You'll pick your restaurant type, based on regulation and licensing. You'll make your way down to a section called business identification. And I'll point out, because this potentially could be confusing, is this section is dynamic around the specific business type that you will come and put in. As an example, I selected here sole prop. If I selected sole prop, then I'm only going to have a few options with regard to EIN and SSN. If I selected, as an example, C Corp, right, you notice I can't put an SSN in the application. So don't be surprised, based on the entries that you select, right, we will automatically change and populate the right fields that you have to fill in. So let's go ahead and just hypothetically do this. Let's say I'm an SSN. All right. You also notice another feature here, right? We want to help you find an accurate address. That's very important for a whole host of reasons. We attempt to look up to the USPS. This is pretty much perfect 99% of the time. There's always addresses, right, that because of rural markets and things that the USPS doesn't even recognize. So if it's not here, you have the opportunity to overcome that. But just as a tip, for some reason, your address isn't there, that's not a problem. Then we'll ask for the owners of the application. And again, this is also important. You have to obviously provide us, 20%, 21% owners, or if there's just a few number of owners, that's fine as well. But take your time through this section. We're going to gather the demographic information, while optional is very important to the SBA. And then we're going to ask you some questions around affiliated entities. So read this. This is also something, as Patrick highlights it, you probably want to look at ahead of time in the knowledge base article so you can quickly navigate this. You make a selection, yes or no. If you have affiliates, we're going to gather that information from you and allow you to move on. So that's sort of step one. Make sure you're eligible, give us the information around the business, and then we're going to talk about the actual award calculation. You'll first tell us how you plan to spend the award, from the time that it's issued to March 11th. The PPP section, obviously this is a test application. When you walk into this application, if you had a loan and you went through with an EIN that matches the PPP, we automatically populate this and we don't let you change it. So that's a very important part. We pull from the system of record. So what we pull into the system is what SBA has on file that was dispersed. If you see a discrepancy, that would be a message into the platform, or a call center will do some research and make sure we can get to the bottom of that. Obviously, PPP was done, quickly as an industry, so there may be some corner cases that folks see that we have to address. But hopefully, in 95% of the cases, this is very clean and automatically will populate, and you'll give it a thumbs up. Then you'll come down to the bottom section, which is the award calculation. If you pull up that PDF application as we're talking on the phone today, you'll see Table 1, Table 2, Table 3, everything that Patrick has highlighted. This is the section that will allow you to make your election and ultimately put in the gross receipts and the gross receipts for 2020, how many locations associated with the given tax identifier, and then calculate your award. So again, pretty simple, especially if you've already done the work ahead of time. You're coming in here and you're making your election. Once this is done, you'll give it a review and then move to the next section. This section, once you finalize your award calculation, we need to figure out how we get you the money in as soon as possible. And there's really two options here. There's the option that the SBA prefers, which is automatically linking your commercial operating account for the restaurant to this grant or award application. And we do that via an automated service. And I'll walk through this in test mode just to give people a flavor of how it works. I'm going to pick a hypothetical account. Well, in fact, I'm not going to put the credentials in here, but if I were you on the phone and you were walking through this at home, you could put your Wells Fargo's credentials on here, and then it'll actually pull right back in here and link the Wells Fargo account. And that's important for a couple reasons. One, we want to eliminate human failure with regard to the routing of the account number. Oftentimes we get typos. And then two, when we link Wells Fargo, we not only get the routing and account number, we also get the identifiable information around that commercial operating account. Or in some cases, it would be a personal account. And if we can do that linkage, and it's in an automated way, and it's independently verified by Wells, that allows us to move this application much quicker. If we can't do that linkage, what we'll effectively have to do is pull up bank statements, have a manual judgmental review that the account that was linked to this award is in fact an open, active operating account of a restaurant with the right ownership, with the right account number, before we allow this even to be reviewed by an SBA employee. So keep in mind, we try to encourage the automated linking service. We recognize that some banks you may not see. There may be some situations where you wish to do manual entry, and that's okay, right? I'll show you that right here. You'll make the attestation that you're going through this, and then you can obviously put your account number. Again, no problems doing this. Just recognize that it potentially will take longer, and this will probably fail at the end because that's not a real routing number. But ultimately, that's what we need you to do, and if all that happens, it obviously accelerates the application a good bit. So call that step 4 in the process. Step 5, and the last step before we talk about signature, is providing the supporting documentation. The SBA, in terms of the application, probably one of the more important parts, because this is how we actually substantiate everything that you've told us in the award calculation steps, section 2 steps before this. Obviously, in this case, I'm a Table 1 applicant, right? So it's a very straightforward 2019-2020 calculation. The SBA on this screen is telling me what they prefer. Obviously, tax forms are always the best, point of sale, and then the internally prepared financials in that order. And it also tells me that I need to provide those bank statements I talked about, right? Because of that manual account process I just went through, now I'm going to have to provide 3 months of my most recent bank statements. And this is very simple to use. You'll pick your category. In this case, let's just go through and pick 2019. You'll navigate to your computer. I'll just find a sample document, and I will upload this. And you'll see if I satisfy 2019, oh, perfect. I get a little green check. I feel good. I got my 2019 returns in there, and I'll do the same thing for 2020. I'll do the same thing for bank statements. A question that we're getting quite a bit is, what if I have 3 separate PDF documents for 3 separate months, right? We have a 1-month option and a 3-month option. They effectively do the same thing under the covers, but if this is easier for you to label it, 3 separate months, that's wonderful as well. You'll always be able to see the documents you uploaded at the bottom and delete them. And at the end of the day, ultimately, we're trying to advise folks as this is the minimum set of documentation that's required. Ultimately, this application will be reviewed by a person. So the more complete your file with regard and responsive to this documentation section, the better. So not only would I make sure that these documents are there, right? If there's other third party, as Patrick highlighted, the CPA comfort level, an accountant that obviously has supported you for years, to me, that's always very helpful as well, right? To make sure the review is very streamlined and quick for the SBA. If they have to go through a series of Excel documents that don't fit, clearly that's going to take longer and it's going to delay your specific award, and in a constrained process like Patrick described, not probably the place everyone wants to be. So documentation is really important to prepare ahead of time, so you have the documents, you know what forms you're going to be required to upload, and hopefully you'll find this very easy to use. If at any time, however, you have questions around documents, also those are in the portal. I'll go back here, right? You can search for documentation, and then that'll have various things such as, hey, this is what's this 35 megabyte limit? How does that work? Why do we have it? Those articles are in here as well. And then finally, the step before the summary step is to tell us who is going to sign this document. Ultimately, we need to make sure we can identify the actual applicant and the signer. So this information will be populated into a knowledge base process, or sort of KBA-based process. Everyone's familiar with these systems. You guys have probably used them when you're applying for credit. That asks you, when did you last pay what's your last address 5 years ago? Who's your brother? Did you ever live at this location 6 years ago? It's these identifiable questions that you ultimately will be asked based on the information provided on the screen, because we need to make sure the person who's signing it is in fact that person, number one. That's an IRS requirement that we take when we're filling out tax forms on your behalf in a digital way, that we take this information. So spend time on this screen, make sure it's accurate, SSN, date of birth. You also get something called a title, which it's obviously, it sounds pretty commonplace, but these are IRS tax titles related to the entity that I selected. And if you'll recall, I was a sole prop at the beginning of this process. So what you don't see is you can't be a CEO in the eyes of the IRS if you're a sole prop. You must be an owner or a sole proprietor. So you may not call yourself an owner or a sole proprietor. You may call yourself a CEO of your sole prop, but pick one of these titles that most reflects and is what you have used on your tax return. Generally, people probably don't know what they've used, but at the end of the day, one of these titles has to be selected. Otherwise, the verification will be delayed with the IRS. So just know that going in. It might seem a little strange, but that's here for good reason. Same idea for phone number and address. Fill that in accurately, and this will allow us to give you the accurate questions so you can answer and then go right into the DocuSign process. The summary screen, and you'll recognize because I didn't fill out a lot of this application, if I missed something like a phone number or a franchise selection or a document, as you see here, it will tell you what you missed. You can click on this and navigate back to that, that page, upload that, and ultimately you're trying to get to a point where there's no missing information. You can't submit if you don't. And at the end, and then you'll see this summary screen at the very bottom that'll say, hey, this is your award, this is where it's going, and that sign and submit button will be lit up in blue, and that's a great sign. You've gotten to the end, you're ready to sign, and the minute that an authorized owner signs that form or clicks that button, you'll be presented with those questions I spoke of earlier. You have to get those questions correct. You'll get an automatically populated PDF document that has two forms. One, something called 4506T that you guys see in the instructions, and then the actual application form. You don't have to fill those out by hand. This system will automatically populate those. You'll have to read them closely, make the requisite attestations, and then sign them digitally via DocuSign. So it's a fairly straightforward, clean process, right? At the end of the day, this is technology and systems. So we've heard some situations where you may have some antivirus programs on or some nuances that make the DocuSign flow not pop up. So, be patient through this process. You might want to try, if you have an issue going through the DocuSign, you can try another browser, but it really should work pretty well. Sign the document, and once you sign it, you'll come back into this SBA portal and you'll be given a confirmation ID, and you'll have an opportunity also to download the actual official application that you digitally signed. If you get that far, that's a great sign, then you're done. You've officially submitted your restaurant application to the SBA, and then that will be reviewed and hopefully approved very quickly by the team on the phone. A couple things I would remind folks through the process. If you have any issues, let's say you complete everything I just said, you sign the document, if you get a confirmation ID and you realize there was an error or an issue, right? These applications can be corrected, meaning you can call the call center and say, I apologize, I need to correct a piece of information on this. not a problem. The call center can send this back to you and you can correct it. Two things I would caution. Number one, that starts the entire process over again, right? So all the work that you just did in the context of, you know, getting it in and getting it in the queue and having an SBA person look at it, you got to go to the back of the line, right? So don't make that a habit if you can avoid it. And also, if for some reason you have a correction, right, there's no guarantee, as Patrick said, there might be funding and there might be the inability to actually move that forward. So not only would you get back in line, that might jeopardize your plays, period. All that said, it's more important that when you get done to this screen, not only would I make sure there's no missing documents, I would spend a minute going through each screen, making sure it's complete, it's accurate, right, and making sure it fits to the documentation, and then you'll hopefully have very few corrections, if any, required. If the SBA does need additional information, we will send you a message through the message dialog here. I don't have any messages right here, but you would get a message and you'd have the opportunity to upload that information. If your bank account is wrong, as an example, we're going to send the application back to you to correct it, right? The actual official application actually has the bank routing and account number on it. So if it's wrong, you have to go through the entire DocuSign ceremony again, right? So another reason to take your time through that process. But again, everything we're trying to keep in the portal, you in generally will not get a phone call from the SBA around this. It'll all come through the portal. There's a correspondence team that will take your questions that you'll have access to come Monday. We would love you if you keep that in this system as well. Certainly can call a call center, but equally as easy, I think, is to message through this platform if you'd like. And that way we can get back to you as soon as possible. So that's sort of the nickel tour of the application. Again, you saw how quickly we did it here as we were talking through it, but I think we're, 20-25 minutes should be good. And then I think you'll be off and running in the process. So let me pause there, and Nicole and Patrick, if you have any questions or things you want to go deeper on, otherwise we can probably go to general Q&A.
Yeah,
go ahead.
There's a few questions that I've pulled that seem to be popping up quite a bit. So first, on Friday, when folks who are not Toast or Square customers and are using the SBA portal to apply will come in and register, what info do they need to register for the SBA account? And then if they're in California, for example, do they need to be online at 6 a.m. to register for the account, or is that more for the application day on Monday, May 3rd?
Yeah. So so registration day is really important, but it's not as important as application submission day. So if you don't want to get up at 6 a.m. or for Hawaii earlier than that, for the 9 a.m. start for registration, you don't need to do that. Registration will proceed, through Friday and into the weekend, but it isn't going to impact your first in, first out. That will be based on submitted applications. So we want you to do it because we want to be able to staff and be ready for the onslaught of help so that day one goes really well. And so it gives us a good estimate of the overall demand. It's also obviously going to be a strong signal to Washington, D.C. that this is a really important piece of the recovery from this pandemic. And so, please, get up and register. But, if it's really early on the West Coast time and you want to wait until 9 a.m. Pacific or later, that's fine. For game day, which is May 3rd, 12 p.m. Eastern, you should be ready to go. So there should be coffee. You should be up, maybe a little bit of jumping jacks, get the blood flowing. You got your plan ready to go. You're at your desktop. You've got your PDFs named, ready to upload. You've asked all your questions. The smartest people have weighed in. Resource partners have weighed in, and all you're doing is waiting for the clock to hit, 12 p.m. Eastern, and you're going to execute. And hopefully 25 minutes later, you'll have submitted, and in less than 14 days, we'll process your review, and you'll get these funds. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Ben, can you provide the information that they'll need to register for an account?
Sure. Yeah, and it's very simple. You'll come in. You obviously need an email address that's valid. You'll also need a United States cellular phone, right? Because we're gonna need, as you enroll, to text you this code every time you log in. So that's important. You need to pick a username and a password, right? The password is fairly complex. It's a 12-digit password. I think no one likes these long, complex passwords because of the nature of the system and the confidentiality that's required. So that should be easy. As Patrick said, registration is going to be open all weekend. We'll have folks trying to help wherever we can. So it really isn't, as he said, urgency on Friday. We'd love everyone to get in there Friday and take advantage of the call center. But if you need to do it Saturday, Sunday, that's fine too, right? We just want people to get through that process because obviously we want to spend time next week, right, helping you navigate some of the complexities of the application, not the complexities of how you log in and set up your phone and your email, right? All of that, let's get that done Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and let's get to the meat and the sort of the substantive matter all next week. So that's our ask, rather not have the call center spend time on, but they may have to, but password resets and things like that on Monday. So if we can get that done by Sunday night, I think we'll be in great shape.
Great. I got some other questions here. If you already have an account with the SBA, for example, I signed up for an account to get an EIDL loan or something else, do I still need to register on Friday?
Yes. So there isn't a single username and password that applies across all SBA programs. So yes, you will need to log in and create your username and password for this program.
Great. So if we apply through Toast or Square, will we be able to access this SBA site for status and progress updates?
Yes, and Ben, you want to share how you do that?
Sure. Yeah, the nice part about what what all these ecosystem partners are doing is you will be handed off ultimately this portal at the very end of the Square and Toast process to sign the DocuSign document, right? So ultimately, Toast has just pick on them. You'll have their experience, and at the very end, you'll say submit, and they'll just hand you off just for a real easy. You'll log right into this platform, will automatically do that. You'll get the document, and then if you wish, you can come back and do that as well. The nice part about what Square and Toast are doing, though, is you shouldn't have to. Right? They will always show you the current status, and because of what they've done with the data, there really shouldn't be a requirement to come in here, frankly, much at all, right? You certainly could, right? You'll have the ability to do it. You'll have a username and a password. But if all these items work correctly, that's just the last step. Square and Toast will keep you posted via the portal, right? Of course, SBA will contact you if you need additional information, and you can use this. But our hope is that's few and far between, and you can stay within their ecosystem for the most part.
Great. And some folks are kind of inquiring about the point of sale systems. So I want to reiterate for you all, if you use Square Toast, you'll apply directly through them. If you use Aloha or Clover, you'll apply through this SBA website that Ben walked through, but they'll be able to provide you with some official documentation of your gross receipts. So it's easy for you to pull that number, put it into the calculation in the form, and upload it into your application. And if you don't have a point of sale partner, that's okay too, or it's not the one that I named. You can apply directly through the SBA. We listed a number of documents that you're also able to provide. So we do accept internal financial statements, and if you can get an authorized accountant or CPA comfort letter to go with those, that's even better. So you still have access to this program, but we do urge you to use your point of sale partners if you have them to help you apply and help you provide the data and documentation you need, because it'll help SBA be able to review your application and get funding out as quickly as we can. So some other questions for you, Ben. What if your bank doesn't show up in Plaid, or how can I find out if my bank account does show up in Plaid?
Certainly. Yeah, and actually, I would not worry about that too much. If you come in on Monday and you can't find the bank because maybe it's a smaller bank or for whatever reason it's offline, you can use the manual option. So you'll do the search. If it's there, we will encourage you to use it. If you need to do the manual option, I would not let the bank and the lack thereof take a lot of time on that Monday. Our intent is to get the complete application in, right? If we can help you move quickly through the bank account, we want to, because that's wonderful. If we can't, right, spend 2 minutes on it, move on to the manual option. We'll look at it in the back end. But don't let Plaid and the automation prevent you from moving through the application on Monday, Tuesday of next week. The vast majority of banks are there, but these are all technology solutions, and we, I think as an organization, know where the United States banking system is in general around technology. They're getting there, but so it's a good question. Keep moving. If you have to use manual, that's not a problem.
Okay, great. And what if I want to link my bank account, but I have several accounts under one login?
Good question. You'll be prompted when you log in and use Plaid of which account you wish to link. So if you have a checking account, a savings, so that you'll get all those options based on the credentials you pick, and then you'll be able to select that right inside the SBA platform, and that account will pull in and link. So that's accounted for.
Great. I know we talked about kind of the authorized applicant, Ben, and someone asked, what if my CPA is preparing my application, but the person signing is in a different state? Do you have any guidance on, who should be filling this out and who's authorized to sign the DocuSign package?
I do. Yeah, what I would say, and Patrick can reiterate, is ultimately this is, if you look at the final line of both the 4506T on the internet and the SBA form, it's an authorized owner of the applicant, right? So it sounds like this example, that individual is not, right? So they're going to struggle to get through the knowledge-based authentication questions to be authorized to sign the 4506T. If the IRS were to audit that form and say, is this an owner that can request the tax return? They're going to say no, and that's going to delay the application. We're going to have to go back and correct it. It's not a good recipe. So I would reinforce, try to avoid that. And certainly this person can help over the phone, but I would not federate it out to non-owners of these restaurants.
Great. On documentation, can I load up more documents than are minimally requested?
Yes, you can. There's no cap, just like PPP. If there's additional documents that you feel round out the file, I would not go overboard, because ultimately this is going to be reviewed by an individual. So I think clarity, precision, and organization is paramount, not volumes, because that effectively actually is probably not constructive. But if you have again maybe 2 or 3 of these categories that Patrick highlighted earlier and we walked through, wonderful. Upload those, make sure it's organized, and that I think will help the review process. But don't do 400 documents. It really at some point is actually going to work against the review process.
Okay, great. There was a question about, it's kind of a specific question, but I just wanted to soothe some fears, that they had 2 business emails in their name and they already tied them to SBA.gov because they were setting up an account to try to get a DUNS number. They're worried that those accounts won't work on the registration day. And so I just want to reiterate what we said earlier, which is this is a separate portal. And so you should have no issues using those emails to sign up here, because this registration is not tied to other SBA accounts or portals. Additionally, there's another question about if I have other receipts on top of my point of sale partner receipts. So maybe I use Clover, so I come to apply through the SBA portal. I upload their documentation package. They gave me my gross receipts number, but I just remembered I also did some sales on DoorDash. So what should folks do in that case?
So just take me through again. So I just want to make sure I get all the relevant inputs to the gross sales receipt number. So just walk me through the example one more time.
Yeah, so for example, I'm using one of the point of sale partners that SBA named as a partner. So let's say it's Clover in this case. They gave me my documentation package, which has my 2019 gross receipts number, my 2020 gross receipts number. And I look at the numbers, I'm plugging them into the application. I realize it doesn't include, for example, a delivery service sales number or some cash sales number. Yep. And how do I incorporate that?
Yeah, so you can provide your externally or internally prepared P&L or balance sheet statement. I mean, interim financials to to document that other sales income. If you filed your tax return and your gross receipts number would include both the point of sale data as well as that other income listed on your tax return, that's another form of documentation. If there is a vendor report created by DoorDash that tells you how much sales you've generated, on some type of cadence, weekly, monthly, etc., you can upload that report of documentation. So it's really just making sure that the number that you put in for 2019 gross receipts and 2020 gross receipts is validated by some type of documentation. And while you don't need to provide multiple forms, if one form covers that number entirely, if you do need 2 different forms or 3 different forms to cover that number, just upload those documents and identify them for what they are. And then, it is always helpful for a reviewer if you include a cover page that just says, this is what I'm doing. This is why you're looking at this.
Great. We've gotten a lot of questions on calculation 3 and the documentation for eligible expenses. So Patrick, if you want to speak to some of that, or Ben, if we want to show that screen, whatever's most helpful.
Yeah, maybe pull the screen up and I'll answer the questions. Sure. Yep. So go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, I was just, so to reiterate, calculation 3. Oh, you want me to pull that screen up? Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I want to show you upload up there. 1 second.
Yeah, so the question was to go over calculation 3 and how you construct it.
Yes, and what documentation to provide in the portal?
Yep.
For eligible expenses.
Yeah, so so for 2020 and 2021 gross sales receipts, if applicable, you can use tax returns, point of sale data, interim financials, that you certify, or a combination of those, as we just discussed. For eligible expenses, if you can have, indicate that a bookkeeper or some type of third-party accountant or CPA comfort letter accompanies your profit and loss statements and your balance statements, it just gives us greater assurance that that's done accurately, so we can move with greater confidence in the review. But that preferred form of documentation is the profit and loss and the balance sheet. If you aren't able to provide that, you can provide documentation against the eligible expenses that you are aggregating. So if you have payroll expenses, you could use a 941, which is your tax filing for that. You could use a third-party payroll report. So if you use ADP or Paychex or something like that. You have outdoor seating expenditures. You would use the receipts from in invoices and payments associated with that project. And then for business debt, you'd have credit card statements or loan statements to document that. And then again, you don't need a CPA comfort letter. You don't need this to be prepared by a CPA. Again, it would behoove you to do that because it gives us greater assurance. But you can have an internally prepared financial statement, such as an income statement or profit and loss statement, signed, dated, and certified, covering those expenses.
Awesome. A great question about the message center, Ben. Is there an email notification when you get a new message, or should they keep checking the web application for new messages?
Yeah, it's a good question. Every meaningful status change, we send a message, including, we need more documentation. We need you to correct your application. Your application was just approved, right? So there's relevant emails that go out, and it's also in here. So there's no reason that you need to watch this portal like a hawk. In fact, we would prefer you not, right? Only come in here when you get a status notification on your, on your email that you use to register. So good question.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to go through actually one other great question. Some folks are asking about which browser they should use, you know, Chrome, Safari. Do you have any tips on that, Ben? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. The more modern browsers, the better. So Chrome, Edge, Safari, all those work wonderful. Mac and PC. Don't use Internet Explorer 11, like some of these things that Microsoft has deprecated, right? So try to find the most modern experience you can, right? This will work on an iPad. It will work on a mobile phone. It's obviously not ideal to upload documents on your iPhone, but it will work. So just keep in mind the more modern computer, just because of the experience and because we're trying to make it modern and easy, but stay away from the really old computers and the old Internet Explorers. That will still work, but it's not ideal.
Awesome. Okay, so just some housekeeping items as we finish up here. Some folks have asked if they'll be able to start filling out the application before May 3rd. You can most certainly use the sample application that is posted at sba.gov/restaurants to get prepared. That won't be your actual application, but it has all of the questions and you can prepare your answers that way. You will be able to begin your application at restaurants.sba.gov on Monday, May 3rd at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Everyone can apply at that time, whether or not you're in the priority groups that we mentioned. So we urge you all to apply at that time, and you do not need to wait for that priority period to be over. So that's Monday, May 3rd at 12 p.m. Eastern at restaurants.sba.gov. And for more resources and for a link to the recorded version of this event, you can go to sba.gov/restaurants. There you'll be able to find a program guide, the sample application I mentioned, the knowledge base, big Q&A database that Ben mentioned, and the call center number. The call center number is 1-844-279-8898. We have support available in multiple languages, and we'll be able to hopefully answer all your questions. And if we don't, we'll add them to that knowledge management system later on once we're able to answer them. So please reach out, and we'll be posting screenshots of this web portal application on the SBA website as well. So you can reference back, kind of get familiar with it so you're ready for Monday, May 3rd. And again, if you're applying if you use Toast or Square, you'll apply directly through them. You'll not apply at restaurants.sba.gov. So we thank all of you so much for joining. We got, over 4,000 questions. So we'll take a close look at those and make sure we have answers to all of those and all of the resources I mentioned. And otherwise, we'll see you all registering for the portal on Friday, April 30th at 9 a.m. Eastern. And we'll see you all applying for this program on Monday, May 3rd at 12 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.